Okay, cool. All right, so welcome to the last day of the bootcamp trainings that we've been giving. Today, we're going to be focusing on design automation. And for those of you that don't know me yet, my name is Jaime Rosales. This is my Twitter handle for JME. Feel free to follow along, chat with me over there. I post a lot of things about technology and sometimes food, coffee, travel, a little bit of everything. So I want to try to keep it entertaining. To understand this training today, we're going to be focusing on the modify your models training that we can find in the learnforge.autodesk.io site. Like the other trainings, it's going to be basically quick sessions during the day. It's more of a self-learning with a live review. So feel free to just like start doing your own thing with the training, and then we will move along and I can answer questions as well. I see some familiar names from the last days. So what's our goal for today? So for our goal today, we have a simple application. It might look simple, but actually it does have a lot of power in it. Basically, we're going to have a chance to input one of our files, let's say a Revit file, an AutoCAD file, an Inventor, or a 3ds Max one. And we are going to define a set of actions that are going to happen on those files, but directly on the cloud. And in this case, we're going to be modifying width and height of the parameter values from that file. So the agenda for today, it's all in US Pacific time zone. So it's 8 a.m. for intro and setup, 10 a.m. for creating the server and the basic app UI, 12 p.m. for preparing a plugin to create the app bundle, and 2 p.m. for defining an activity and executing the work item. Approximately 30 minutes for each session, and then I will leave you to it in order to basically work on the tutorial, and I will be coming back from time to time to help you out with questions and so on. So how to ask questions? If you see in your Zoom environment down here, there is a raise a hand to ask a live question, or you can submit it through the Q&A or the chat as well. So if you want me to take a look at your screen or anything like that, raise a hand and I can unmute your mic and we can start talking, and then just enable your sharing capabilities. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to give a little bit of an intro and also help you out with the setup for this for today's tutorial. And we start with design automation version 3. So what is design automation? It can be summarized into these words. Basically, it's to run the automations on your design files. So think about it like you have a design file and you want to process a certain action on those design files. In the usual thing that you tend to do, it's all right. Let's think about this example for a second. We have an AutoCAD file, right? There is a command inside of AutoCAD that you can turn your DWG file into a PDF, doing something like plot to PDF, for example. Okay, that sounds simple. We open out AutoCAD, we load the file, we run the command, and as a result, we get a PDF. Cool, that works. So why do we have to do this design automation stuff if we can do it that easily? Well, let's think about now, what happens if I have 1,000 files that I want to turn into a PDF? Yeah, you can still do it with AutoCAD. There's 2 ways to do it with AutoCAD. You either open 1,000 times. Well, you open once AutoCAD and then you load 1,000 files and then run the command 1,000 times, which is quite a bottleneck and very time consuming. Or you can run a plugin, okay? So using the AutoCAD API, you design your own plugin that basically will get ready to receive the amount of files that you're sending and to perform an action on that files that you're sending. All right, cool. So I don't have to manually type plot to PDF anymore 1,000 times. My plugin will actually take care of that. All right, so again, the question, why do I still need design automation? Well, if you notice the 2 scenarios that I just spoke about, you always need AutoCAD. right? So you need to open AutoCAD. You need to have a registered license for AutoCAD in order to do this. What if I tell you that you will be able to actually do exactly the same scenario that I just described, but from a web page? Basically, we're kind of used to, let's say, we use Facebook, right? So we grab an album of photos, we drag and drop it into our web browser, and then boom, we have an album of photos with our friends and so on. Well, the same kind of workflow could be applied in this case. So you have, let's say, a website that you created, and then you give the user the option to upload, let's say, a zip file that contains your 1000 DWG files. And then your application, your web application, will receive the zip file and then send it over to a cloud server that has a version of AutoCAD running, process this with a set of instructions that you gave into this plugin that it's running on the cloud server. And as a result, give you back a zip file containing 1000 PDFs, right? Simple batch operation. One input, one output, okay? What happened here is that you ran everything on a web application. You actually not even had to open AutoCAD. They not even knew that you were going to be using an AutoCAD server in the cloud in order to process this. Basically, they just gave you 1000 DWGs, and they received back 1000 PDFs, and that works, okay? And the same thing could be applied for something like, for example, Revit. Let's say we want to change, we have a database of parameters about cost of the materials and so on. And this database kind of like changes quite often, right? We cannot, so the servers that are running on the cloud cannot connect to, let's say, to the internet with the location where the database is, but we can send a file containing the information from the database, something like JSON file or an XML file, something that for a developer might sound a little bit familiar. So we can send those information and then apply it to the model that we have, for example, hosted in BIM 360 or hosted in Google Drive or something like that, okay? So basically, like I was saying, you have a website or a mobile app, and then we take care of with a RESTful call to Design Automation API. And then Design Automation API, depending on what kind of activity you define and what kind of engine are you going to be using, you're going to head over into, let's say, the Inventor server. The Inventor server will run your code with the Inventor API, which in this case will process an action on whatever you actually send. You can send data, you can send files, you can send whatever you want to send, okay? Whatever it makes sense to actually send. Don't send a video, a music video or something like that. Inventor API will not know what to do with that. So, and the same thing for AutoCAD, Revit, and at the same time also 3ds Max, okay? So from the left side, so the Forge app basically gets source data with one of these kind of files. So AutoCAD, 3ds Max, Revit, Inventor, JSON files, XML files, CSVs, whatever you actually want to send. We send it over to the servers that contain the engines hosted on the cloud, on the Forge cloud, in order to process whatever you're sending, okay? And then as an output, we can get back a modified data design file, some derivative outputs like IFCs or PDFs, like I was saying, the plot to PDF stuff, or let's just imagine a series of reports getting back to you. So one thing to remember is that this process in Design Automation works as a batch operation. So basically, to summarize that, a batch operation meaning we have one input. It can be one design file. It can be a zip folder with 1000 files inside. It can be a mix of a design file, a JSON file, and some CSV file. As long as it goes in as one, we're good, okay? We cannot send individual files at the same time. So we have to basically pack up everything, just send it. Now, the design automation server with the engine will receive it and run basically your app bundle. Your app bundle means it's running a plugin that you design for the engine in the cloud to actually run the actions that you want it to be performed on the file. Okay, so there are a couple of terminologies that we want to get familiar with it. App bundle being your plugin. Okay, so if you're familiar with the AutoCAD API, Revit API, Inventor API, and 3ds Max API, you can use those APIs in order to create your plugins to run on these engines, okay? The same way that you do it on the desktop side. But in this case, we don't have an access to the user interface, right? Because basically we send stuff to the cloud, and then something happens, and then we get back a result. So we need to take into consideration, for example, errors. So we need to take that into consideration. We need to take into consideration interaction that we usually can do with the UI. So let's say if you build a Revit plugin and then you open it up in Revit, the fact that you're just clicking on a button, that's using the Revit UI DLL. We don't have an access to that. We have an access to the DB one, the DB DLL one. So any kind of interaction that you need to do in order to make that action happen, it needs to be sent previously to that. So what we're going to be doing today is basically we send what are the values that we want to process into that file, and which one is the file that we want it to be processed on. So if you think about it, our user interface and your user experience happens on the web application. So in some way, it can be just defined as you do everything on the user interface on the website, and then you send it over as a batch operation to the cloud servers, okay? And as a result, then design automation with your plugin has an output of whatever you actually are expecting to. It can be a combination of the files on the right side, or it can be only one of them, like a new Revit file that contains all the data that I sent, combined with the source data that I wanted to send for my design file. This is exactly what we're going to be doing today. Okay. So make your data available in the cloud. Like I said, it can come in from different kind of sources. It can come in from BIM 360. It can come in from Azure, Google, Dropbox, AWS, whatever you prefer. Something that you have it available, okay? You send links to your data to ForgeDA. So basically for permissions. So we need like some pre-signed URLs in order to send this kind of data. So in a certain way, it needs this permission availability. We download those inputs via a web request, right? So using the API, we're gonna get back this inputs itself. We run the code, we upload the result via the web request, and then we get back an output. So like I said, inputs and outputs are not, so, and then something to remember, inputs and outputs are not stored. Basically, they're just download and process and then discarded, right? So they just kind of like go through. You send something, gets into the engine, runs, you get back something. And those two things, gone. But something that stays on the server, it's the definition of what's going to happen with that, okay? So let's get into this. So as a requirement, let me see your names. I think everybody did this part already. So if you do not have a Forge account yet and a Forge app, you can raise a hand. But if you do, I think we're good with that side. For tools today, this one, it's going to be focusing on Node.js. So again, I think all of you at this point should have Node.js and also Visual Studio Code. If not, go ahead and please install the LTS version. Do not go with the developer version. It might have some bugs in it, and it might be a little bit hard to identify what's going on in case something doesn't work. And then for Visual Studio Code, the stable build. Visual Studio Code, it's something that we like to use personally. We have an extension that one of my colleagues, Peter Bros, has built. It's called the Forge. I think it's just like a Forge extension, basically, Autodesk Forge extension, where you also have a chance to use design automation directly from there. And it's actually quite nice to look into it. I think today he released a new version of it, so that's quite exciting. And I'm gonna just quickly look into the question. So for today in this Node.js one, we are okay just using Visual Studio Code. And the reason why, it's because the plugins that we're gonna be using, we're not gonna build them from scratch. We actually are gonna provide them to you. For later on, whenever you wanna start building your own plugins, yes, Visual Studio Community will be, or Visual Studio .NET, it's the one that you will be using for later. Okay, so let's keep going. So like I said, Node.js, Visual Studio, Git is always something good to have. And also, we're going to be using this tool called nrock. Basically, when we run our local host, it's not connected to the web, and we need something in order to give us back a callback. So for that matter, we're going to be using this nrock.com nrock tool. And I will show you in a bit about this tool. So just bear with me. So then this might answer your question, Scott. So do I need AutoCAD Inventor, Revit, 3ds Max, or Visual Studio Community for that example? For this training, we will provide you the plugins, so no need. But for later, yes, you do need also to develop, test your plugin. You need these engines, and also to build those plugins, the usual kind of workflow using Visual Studio Community and so on. Okay. And yes, they will do work with Revit models that are hosted on BIM 360 Design, Sandy. Like I mentioned before, your data can come in from different kind of sources hosted on the cloud or whatever we send out directly from the file directory or something like that. Work with shared Revit models. I think this is something that it's being worked on. It should be coming soon, I believe, or it might be already available. I will have to double check on that one. Okay, so let me keep going with this. All right, so let's move into a live demo. Okay, so what we're going to be focused on today. So basically, we will be creating a web application that would allow us to upload an input file. And we will be changing the width and the height parameters of this file and give us back an output file. So the UI basically will let you define the app bundle, the activity as an initial configuration, and execute the work item, which basically is an output of that result. Okay. So both input and output files are saved in an OSS bucket. Later on, you could use the view models tutorial that we did before in order for you to visualize the result model if you want. So for example, if you end up using the same kind of keys that we've been using on the previous days, and if you run that view models later, you will see a new bucket actually that got created because of this process. And then you will be able to see the result file in it as well. Okay, so let's get started. So we are gonna get started with the creation of the server. And like I said, we will need some tools as a prerequisite in order to be able to work with design automation on a local environment. So when design automation finishes modifying your model, it needs to notify you back. So as I said, your machine is not exposed to the web. So the nrock tool basically creates a temporary address to receive those notifications. So this tool will only be required locally. when we run it hosted on something like Heroku or anything like that, that's when we can use a callback URL for that. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and download that. So we can head over to the nrock site. I think in order to get started, I don't think you need any other than just doing some sort of user. I'm running on my user for GitHub. So if you have a GitHub account, you can easily sign up with GitHub and it will let you go into here. As you notice, also, I'm running on a Mac, and I want to ask from you guys, who's running on a Mac? Okay, Scott. All right, cool. So you can follow along the steps that I will do, because it's nothing too different. It's just a matter of kind of like paying attention to what you actually end up sending. Okay, so we're gonna download that. I already download, so I will show you later. Basically, when we download, we get this. Okay, so we get an nrock stable Darwin AMD 64 for the Mac users, or you can pick the ones for Windows. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is that we are gonna put that in the location where it's gonna be accessible to us. So don't throw it in any kind of like temp folders or anything like that, because right now you're gonna lose it. So what I'm doing is that I'm just adding the zip file to be recorded on my folder that I have, which is called Bootcamp October 2020. And once I have it there, I unzip it in order to get back this application, which is an nrock executable. Okay, so we're just gonna leave that there. We're not gonna touch this. We're not gonna double click on it or anything like that. We're just gonna leave it there, because what we're gonna do next is from our command prompt or our terminal, we're gonna navigate to that location and then just get the nrock started. Okay, so after downloading, we unzip it, and then for those of you on Windows, you're gonna start the command line prompt, and you're gonna navigate to that folder and run this following command. Okay, so nrock http 3000 host header localhost 3000. And this will give you back a forwarding URL value, which we will need as one of our environment parameters in our project. Now, Scott, you said you are on a Mac. So the only difference is that we're going to head over to the terminal. Same steps, but we need to add a prefix of a .forward / and then this command. And that's going to be the only difference. So basically, it will look something like this. Okay. So I'm in this location where I have the nrock like placed unzipped. Okay, so I have my, for example, from the previous tutorial that I was doing, some design automation testing that I was doing yesterday. So I can do ./nrock http 3000 host header localhost 3000. And if I hit enter, it starts connecting to nrock. So now I have a new forwarding URL that I'm going to be using in order for design automation to notify me there that we're good and that everything actually went through and worked. Okay. So as a give of a warning, so basically nrock tends to expose your local server to the web while it's in use. So whenever we're done with the tutorial, please remember to actually close and quit nrock. Okay. So whenever you want to run that sample again, you will need to get nrock started, and you're going to get a new URL that you're going to be using in replacing into your parameter, into your environment variable for that nrock stuff. Okay. All right. So does anyone was able to run the nrock? And if not, please just raise a hand and I can help you out. Or just to keep you in a queue and I will help you out later. Okay, I don't see any hands, so we're gonna move along. All right, so now we're gonna start with our setup project and we're gonna go into Node.js. So we are going to create a folder in your machine, and we're not going to use spaces to avoid any special characters for this tutorial. So we can use, again, the forge sample name. I'm going to try actually running with a different kind of name. The reason why is because I was doing one forge sample yesterday. And then we're going to open Visual Studio Code, do a file open folder, and select the newly created folder. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the DA tutorial, actually, let me add a new one here. We're going to call it DA live tutorial. OK. So I'm going to go inside of here. And in here, I'm going to call it Forge sample. OK. All right. So now we're going to open a new window for the Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open a new folder. And I head back to here. This is the one that I just did. And we're going to open this folder, even though it's empty. OK. And now, as you remember before, we're going to add a new terminal. All right, we have a new terminal now. There's nothing in it. And we're going to head back to here. And then once we do that, so this is the step that I just did, right? The adding of the terminal. And once we do that, we're going to start our node project in the same way that we have started the ones at the beginning of the week with npm init. And remember that we are going to change the entry point to use start.js instead of the index.js that they kind of give you as a default. So that's one of the only things that we're gonna be doing. Okay. So we're gonna start with that. So npm init. Is it gonna be called for example? Yes. Version 1.010. Yes. Description. DA tutorial. Entry point. This is where we need to change it. Start.js. Test command, leave it empty for now. Git repo, we're going to leave it empty for now. Keywords, DA, author, Jaime Rosales, license ISC or MIT. Does this look OK? Yeah, name, da-da-da. Yes, so yes. Oh, my screen, it's a little bit cut off with that. Let me bring it up. Yeah, so we're going to hit yes, yes. All right, cool. So now we have a package JSON. Package JSON, quite empty right now. We don't have any dependency, so that's something that we need to add soon. OK, so now we are going to be installing packages. So by default, a Node.js project, basically it's empty. So we need to install a few packages with npm install. So we're going to start with the basics like the Express server, a body parser for the JSON handling, Molter for the uploading of the files, and of course the Autodesk Forge one. And we have a couple other ones here that we're using. For example, this Autodesk.forge.design automation, it's one that it's dedicated to the version 3 of design automation. At some point, we're thinking about merging this one to the Autodesk Forge one, but for now, this is how we're going to use it. You can do npm install of each one of them individually, but that's going to be running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times with the -- save. I actually can give you a little tip. And then if you see here, we have already a copy of how our package JSON should look. So we can just quickly copy this, just the dependencies. OK, so we copy this. I'm going to try this right now. We have the part of the license. We do a comma because we're going to add a new line. We add the dependencies, all the stuff in here. We save it. And if we run npm install, it's going to check the package JSON. And I'm going to start installing all the different stuff that I just had included in here. Instead of doing npm install, body parser, -- save, wait for that. npm install, cookie session, -- save, wait for that. I just got a little bit lazy and I did this part. So now I can check if everything got installed. So I see Autodesk Forge design automation. I see What other one do I have? Body parser, cookie session, express, yes. Forge APIs, yes. Form data, yes. Molter, most likely, yes. And sockets.io, yes. And also the adapter client and parser. All right, cool. So yeah, so that works. Okay. So let me close this folder now. So we have now the package.json, the package.-log.json, which gets created by an npm, and the node module folder that contains all our packages inside. All right. Okay, cool. So now let's move along. So now the files and the folders, basically, we need to create, again, one folder for routes, one folder for public, okay, in order for our folder structure to look something like this. And then we are going to add a configuration like we have done in the other previous tutorials in order to add that launch.json configuration. And if you notice something compared to the other ones that we do have space again, Forge client ID, Forge client secret, but now we have a Forge webhook URL. And this is where we're going to be placing our endrock URL. So it's something to keep in mind at the time of actually doing this. And that's the reason that we have endrock running. So if you remember, still running for me. So this is the URL that we're going to be including in there. Okay. Okay, so let's do that right now. Okay, so we need a folder. Let me move my zoom bar out of the way. And we're going to call it public. We're going to call it, oh, not that one, sorry, outside. We're going to call it routes. Cool. And we are going to add a configuration for Node.js. All right, cool. And we're going to get that text from the tutorial, copy. We're going to select everything, paste it. Let's make this thing a little bit smaller. All right, and now we have Forge client ID, Forge client secret, webhook URL. We know the webhook URL, so we can copy this. Okay, cool. So now we will have to add the ID and client secret after, all right? And one thing to remember with the ID and the client secret is that your app needs to have design automation of one of those services that you're going to be using in your app. So if by any reason, when you created your app, you remove or uncheck the design automation one, just make sure that you have it present at the time of getting your keys again, okay? So I will add my client ID and secret later. So let's keep going. All right, so now we need a start.js because this is basically what our Express server is going to need as a entry point. So we are going to have an app, which basically will get a requirement from a file that we're going to create in a bit, which is called server. And then also a socket.io file that it's basically going to be using this library for sockets, which is kind of like a communication module. The server is going to be listening up on a specific port, and then it will let us know in which port it's actually listening on. And in case of any error, it will give you an error of that there is this port that's already being used. So try to use something else or just kill the process of that port in there. So we're going to copy this one, go back to here, add a new file, start.js, paste this, cool. And then the file server static files, which basically is going to be serving all the HTML, the routes to the API request, it needs to be placed on the root folder as well with the following content. So using the path module in order to identify the path where our files are going to be stored. Again, express, the cookie session, config, which we still need to create this file for it. We have a check in case the the client ID and client secret are being empty and you forgot to add them into your launch JSON configuration. And And then basically starting that Express application the same way that we have done on the previous ones. And yeah, that's about it. So, and then also forward of one of the APIs inside of the routes for the design automation, which we will be building later on. So click again outside, add new one, server.js. Paste this. Go. All right, so everything looks okay. All right, perfect. Now we're going to be using sockets.io. So in the root folder, we're going to create the sockets.io JS file. So if you notice, we have socket.io.js in order to become a JavaScript file. So in this one, basically, we're going to be doing some uses of sockets as the library in order to communicate with the HTTP requests. So let me copy this one. I'm going to get back here, click outside, add a new one, socket.io.js, turns it into a JavaScript file, paste this, save it. Everything, model exports app, HTTP server app, socket.io HTTP. All right, cool. In the root folder, we're going to create now the config.js. So if you remember before, we were doing something very similar where we had exposure to the credentials. So the client ID, client secret. Now we have a new one, which is going to be the webhook URL, which in this case is going to be the nrock one. Passing in the scopes and some information about like circuit breakers, retry. So in case something goes off, like how many times it's gonna give it a test again in order to perform this part. So like I said, we're using these environmental variables at the time of running the Express server. So those variables will be basically what connects us to Autodesk Forge. So copy again this thing. We head over here, click outside, add a new file, config.js, paste this, save this, and get back. And now we're gonna move into the routes folder, and we're gonna start with, we're gonna do another common folder inside of it, like a subfolder. And then inside of that, we're gonna add the auth.js. And we have done something very similar on the other ones, which basically, this is what we're gonna be using in order to get our information about the client for the two-legged authentication and so on, using the Forge APIs module. So copy to clipboard, and we're gonna do, remember, routes, subfolder common, file auth.js. Okay, so click here, click on routes, new folder, common. It's gonna look next to it. We're gonna click on common. And now we're gonna add a new file. It's gonna call auth.js. Paste this one here. Authentication client two-legged, credentials, model export, get client. Cool. Since we got 3 calls at this first page, loading, let's initialize this one now to avoid concurrent requests. Okay. Tokens are auto refresh, keeping clients in simple cache. That's one of the reasons we tend to do not here, but here, some kind of like interval stuff. If you see, we have part of the client. Then if we move into the server, we get config credentials, so the client ID and the client secret. Yeah, okay. Everything is looking. Let's see if there's some other stuff with the get client that I saw. No, I think we're good with that. Okay. So now the project basically, in some way, it's almost ready. So our folder structure should look something like this. So the VS Code for our launch.json, the node modules for our npm installs, a public folder, which is still empty, and then the routes in common with OAuth.js, config.js, package.json, server.js, socket.io.js, and start.js. So, and also the package log.json. Okay. All right. And let me check if I'm not going too fast, because I might actually. So hands-on, we will create the account, install the software, and did I move ahead? I think I did. That was later. Okay, I gave you some extra time. All right, so, and I think I move ahead because some of you guys already did the creation and installation of the software and so on. So if you guys want me to, I can continue with the one that we're supposed to do in a bit. Because this is what, so Forge account app, client ID, ID installed and running. So question for everybody, who does not have this already? And if not, just raise a hand. Okay, cool. So everybody has it. Now, all APIs are selected, callback URL, ID and secret, the tools. This one will be in case you do some plugin development, which we're not going to be doing today. And this is what we just did, the creation of the server. This is for .NET Core. This one shouldn't be the one displaying. And we can continue with the basic app UI. Yeah, we can do that one. Okay. And then, so we're going to do now the basic app UI. And then again, the interface is based using some kind of like vanilla HTML and JavaScript. So we wanted to keep it really simple, not to add any kind of framework like React, Angular, Vue, or something like that. So it essentially will be kind of like the same as any on the server side, but there are a few differences because we're going to be implementing that WebSocket in order to give us back that kind of notification. So again, we're going to choose our language, which is going to be the Node.js one. And we're going to start with a UI with the HTML file and also a JavaScript one. So the HTML, basically, very similar to what we've done in the past with a navigation bar at the top. And then later on, just a couple of containers to add those fields for the width and the height, the input of the file, a drop down for the existing activities, and then just a container where everything is going to be display of the actions that are happening. So we can quickly copy that one and then head over to public, add a new file, and do index.html and paste this. Okay, I think everything looks good. Yeah, and then if you notice, we are referencing into a JS Forge Design Automation.js file that we don't still have. So we need to add that folder. So new folder, call it JS. New file, let me get the name from here. New file, Forge Design Automation.js. Okay. And then probably it's the file that we have below here. Yes. So we are going to create that JS folder under the public, which we already did, and also the Forge Design Automation.js file with the following content. So again, when the document ready, when it loads ready, it will do some cleaning first, clearing the account, defining the activity if it's already shown, and create the app bundle activity and start the word item, which are going to be the actions that are going to be part of those buttons. Preparing the list with information about the activity, engines, and local bundles, and listing out the endpoints itself for the activities, clearing the account, create a bundle activity, create the app bundle, create the activity, which are just referencing to endpoints that we have inside of our routes that we will later on create. And then also a function for starting the work item. Write logs, starting the connection. Okay. So, and don't worry if this doesn't make too much sense right now, we will get onto it. Okay, so now we have this code. I'm gonna paste it here. And then if we move down, basically, the final result should look like this. So we have, again, VS Code, no modules, public, JS folder, forgedesignautomation.js, index.html, routes, common auth.js, config.js, package.json, server.js, socket.io, star.js. Actually, at this point, I think we can try it. It's not going to do anything, but our UI, it's going to run. So let me actually create a new set of API keys. My apps, create a new one. So this is the one that I told you that you need to make sure that it's actually selected. So DA live tutorial, live demo. Callback URL doesn't need to be the nrock one. We can keep this one because either way, we're not going to use it right now. So we create that. Creating the app. Yep. All right. So now get this client ID. Launch JSON ID here. I'll change this later. It's fine if you guys see it right now. Save this. And let me try to run this thing. Oh, yes. No, so it's not going to work yet because we still need to do a definition to the design automation.js. Actually, if I add it, let me see. Routes, new. Even though if it's empty, it's fine. Oh, where do I use object? Yeah, no, it's not going to work yet because we still need a couple of things to be set up. But yeah, at this point, it should kind of look like with all the preparation files that we have. So it's something that I guess we can adjust. So I would say, see you at, so what time is it? It's 11:50. Yeah, that's the reason I kind of went over because I took a little bit longer. So I will leave you to work on this and I will see you back at 10 a.m. So in that way, you guys can cover all the first part of the tutorial, basically up to here. So this file. So you need to take care of from here, create server, but basic app UI, index.html, and get to here. And then we will get into preparing the plugin, defining an activity, executing the work item, and running it. Okay? All right. So let me change that to 10. This is going to be now 10. So we will actually finish early. This will be 10 a.m., not 10 p.m. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let me see. I have a chat. Can you help me with nrock? Yes. 1 second, Kent. I'll help you right now. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'm going to leave this one here. And this is where we're going to see you back in a bit. And for now, let me stop my recording and I will help you out right now. Okay. All right. So as of now, we're going to move ahead from the create a server and basic app UI. So that should be done by now. So questions, ignore that 1 p.m. Is it's something that I forgot to change. But next up, we're gonna start building the plugin and app bundle. Okay, so in the meantime, you can continue submitting your questions if any questions come up, and then I will look into them while I'm explaining this part. So as of now, you should have the project created with the server setup and also the OAuth code. In order to go into preparing the plugin and that bundle, we will get some bundle folder. We're not going to download from here. I'm actually going to show you in the instructions of the tutorial where we have the specific instructions for the Node.js setup. I think this one, it might be for the .NET Core one. So let me move into that. OK. So we are up to this point. We have our folder structure set up like this. We created the .vs code folder. No modules gets automatically created. Public folder we create. JS folder we create. Force design automation.js we create. Index.html we create. Routes in common subfolder we create. OAuth.js, and then the rest of the files also. OK, so let's move forward, and then we're going to prepare the plugin. So basically, the sign automation will use bundle just like the Autodesk App Store. For example, what this means is that the bundle itself will have a package content.xml and also a zip that includes the DLL and some other required files that are pertaining to the plugins itself. So if you don't know much about the API plugins from this kind of engines, you are always welcome to look into more detailed information at the Autodesk App Store Developer Center. So in this section, we will be creating a basic plugin that will update the width and height parameters for that file that we're going to be providing. And it's going to give us back a resulting file with those new values in it. So let me move into it. There are a couple of prerequisites here that for this Node.js one basically will not apply. So we can kind of move along. The reason that we have this, it's because some people that are using, for example, .NET, feel more comfortable building their own plugins. So later on, whenever you decide to start building your own plugins to do your own kind of actions, you can head over and come back here to this section, the Prepare Your Plugin one, and learn more about how can you build your own one. So you will need 7-zip, for example. You will need Visual Studio in order to use the APIs from the products, and one of the softwares as well for testing and debugging your design automation plugin. But right now, since we're doing everything on the Node.js side and we are actually giving you a plugin, we will not need to do that. So I'm going to choose one of the engines, and I'm going to choose Revit. OK? So basically, if you pay attention to one of the things here, it says this step will help you create a basic Revit plugin for design automation. And for more information about that, we have a site which helps you build my first Revit plugin tutorial. OK, but that's going to be on a separate day. So, but since we're using Node.js, we can download the bundle zip into public bundles folder for the Node.js side. And we can later on skip this section completely. OK, so we are going to go ahead and do that. So we are going to click on the download the bundle zip. And actually, give me 1 second. I think someone is at my door. Nobody's home. So let me just pause this for a second. For that, that's one of the things about working from home sometimes, I guess. OK, all right, we're recording. All right, so we are going to be downloading. Oh my God, you got to be kidding me again. So sorry. 1 second again. All right, so where were we? Yes, so we're going to give you that bundle So we can click on it. This will download my new bundle. So we have that update Revit parameter project that we can place later on inside of our, why is it not working? Inside of our Forge sample in the public folder. So we can create a new folder here that is going to be called bundles. But for that, let's do new folder. Did I miss the new folder? New folder. We're going to call this one bundles. Okay. And now we're going to get the Revit param one. Copy this one. Go back. Bundles. Add it here. Now, when we see it in our project, we have it in this location of the public and bundles one. Okay. So let me get back to, all right. So now we don't have to go over this entire thing. This is basically to build this update Revit param plugin from scratch, from the beginning. This might take too much time. And also, I don't know if you guys have Visual Studio with .NET Framework and so on. So this is something that you guys can practice later on. But for this section, we're gonna skip it. So we can click on the skip this section, head over again to the Node.js one, and continue in order to start creating the app bundle Node.js file. And yes, we have other bundles examples. We have the Revit one, the Inventor, the AutoCAD, and the 3ds Max that you can test out for this tutorial. And later on, I can show you some resources on samples that we have created in order to do some other automations. Okay, so now inside of the routes folder, we're going to be creating the designautomation.js file. And in here, basically, we'll be creating those endpoints that our utils class for that bundle it's going to be using in order to upload the file for and a few more like helpful functions that we're going to need for this sample. Oh, yes, I think there is a typo there. So it is routes. Thanks for catching that, Sandy. So yeah, so it's inside of routes, not route. We need to change that one. So we're going to be creating this designautomation.js file that basically starts using a lot of the different NPMs that we set up, like the path, the FS module, which is for the file system, the URL, Express, the HTTP calls, the form data that we're going to be sending in, Multer for uploading, and also the router for the Express router side. Also getting the client and the internal token from the subfolder common and file OAuth, the configuration from the config file, the DAV3, Design Automation version 3, that it's going to be required from the Autodesk Forge Design Automation module, and the Forge APIs from the Forge APIs module. And here we're going to start creating some of those endpoints and also routers together with that utils class that we're going to be using quite a lot with the design automation part. Okay, so let me get this one, copy to clipboard. And then we're gonna, inside of routes, we are gonna create a new file. It's gonna call designautomation.js. Oh, I know why, because I already created it in the one before. I was like, why? So you remember I created to test out if this thing was going to run, but it didn't? Yeah, so I already had that one. So we can paste this stuff in here. And then basically, there are different functions in order to do different actions, like uploading of a file, something to help you identify which engine you're going to be using. So you're either using the 3ds Max one, the AC Core Console for AutoCAD, the Inventor Core Console for Inventor, and the Revit Core Console for Revit. Okay. Some other stuff about creating a new Design Automation v3 client API, as then the default settings, search files in the folder and filter them, some alias for that app. So either in this case, we're using a dev alias because we're testing out our development environment. Later on, you can change it. Let's say whenever you graduate that app bundle to be a production ready one, in order for you to identify it in your set of keys, you can graduate it to become a production environment. The prefix for the app bundles and the activity, basically we give it a nickname, and we're using the credentials client ID value as that nickname. This is just for us to be able to identify which bundle is the one actually stored in our account. So at some point, you're going to have multiple ones, so you can identify it to figure it out which client ID it's being used. You can give it a different name too, but for us, it's a little bit easier to identify per client ID. This one returns the directory where basically it's going to be stored in your local machine. A static instance for the Design Automation API. And I think that's it for now. So we're going to save this. And then it's going to move forward. Keep going. And then app bundle. So before creating the activity, we need to define the app bundle with the plugin and selecting the appropriate engine. So we're going to copy and paste the following endpoint after that utils class in order to have our endpoints for the app bundle, the Design Automation engines, and also the define of the new app bundle. We're going to check if that app bundle already is defined. So if it's already defined, we don't need to define it again, basically. And uploading of that zip with the bundle, and then exporting to the router. Okay. So basically, it says after the utils class, we're going to copy this and add it to that same designautomation.js file. So we head over, and how do we know when that utils class is over? So one simple way to do it is we head over to this section, right? So we see that our utils class is here. VS Code gives you this option to collapse the entire thing that it's part of that class. And so it's saying that we need to add it right after the class utils. We're going to do it right here. We're going to add that in there, and we have already all the endpoints. And then after that, we can expand back the class. Then we have a visual component of all the code that we have so far. So we're done with that part of the app bundle. And then I think we have one more. No, actually, we're up to. So now, if we run this web app now and click the configuration button, we should see a reference to our app bundle and the list of all the available engines. But just keep in mind that this do not work yet. It's just for us to see if this thing already it's in a state where actually can run the UI, and we can see whatever we have inside of this public bundle. So if I put here the AutoCAD one, the Inventor, the 3ds Max, and the Revit one, we will be able to see that all different 4 bundles are available. And then we will get a different dropdown with all the different engines available for this. Okay, so let's try that. We're going to start debugging. See if I don't get this error anymore. Yeah, good. This is some kind of warning that I've been having with the node package, but you can ignore that for now. So it says that the server is listening on the port 3000, and then we have an OAuth2 client created with the following scope. So we have all the permissions that we need. This is just a console log that we have coming from the auth.js. So if we open a new local 3000, so all right, cool. So we do have Now the UI running, where we have the form data for the width, the height, the option to choose the file, and the existing activities. We don't have any activities yet, right? Because we haven't like set up that. But if we head over to configure, now we see that we have the update RBT param bundle that I defined before, and we have a list of all the available engines, okay? So if we're doing a Revit one, we need to pick one of the Revit engines, okay? But we're not gonna pick anything of this right now because basically the application doesn't do anything else other than showing you information right now. So we can just leave it there and close this. So that way we know that our bundle, it's already part of that form, and then we can also see the engines. And that's being at a good state with this tutorial so far. Okay. I think I do have to do something else. Plugins and app bundle. No, I think that's it, because later on we will gonna be defining the activity and executing the work item. So it's not gonna be at 1 p.m. Sorry for that. It's gonna be at, so it's 1:26. We can do, I'm gonna give you a bit more time this time. We're gonna do it at 12 p.m. because I know some of you guys are a little bit behind with this, and I want to give you a chance to catch up. So 12 p.m. we'll get back to start with activity and work item. And then this is going to be 12 p.m. questions at, well, 12. Okay. All right. So let me stop my recording here, and then I can ask you if you guys have any questions. Okay, so we are back to do the definition of the activity and also execute the work item. And I see one question. You have the list of different engines. Perfect. And can you see also your plugin being displayed in that list? Well, you respond, I will continue. Oh, there you go. Yes. All right, perfect. So you're good to go, Scott. Okay, so the next part, definition of activity and execute the work item. By now, you should have that plugin zip in your bundles folder, and then also the app bundle code. We're going to work now on the activity and the work item. So let me move into it. Basically, we're going to get back to here, skip this step, Node.js. We're done with this. This is what I meant. If you have, you can see your app bundle and also the list of different engines. Okay, so now to define the activity. So basically an activity, it's what we're going to be using to specify which kind of action it's going to be executed on that engine. So it specifies the number of input and output files that are coming in. So let's say either it's one Revit file, one JSON file, or one zip file that contains different kind of things. In this case, for the tutorial, we are going to be using an activity that has two inputs, a file and a JSON data. And we're going to have one output, okay? So we're going to select the Node.js one, and then we're going to start with the definition of the activity. So now we will write the endpoints for creating a new activity and getting the existing activities. And then we're going to be copying the following code right before the last line of the model exports router. So in here, we have functions and API endpoints to create the activity. Also to, where's the other one? To get all the activities that are defined for this account. So if we have more than one activity, we will be able to actually get them as well and then visualize them. In this case, you're only going to have one, okay? So we're going to copy this, and we're going to head back to our project. And again, we are on the routes design automation file. We're going to head over to the bottom of that file. And right before the model exports router, we're going to add now our snippet of code for the definition of the activity. So here's what we added. So create activity of a new activity. It's pointing out to the design automation node bundle in order to give us back what we need and build up the activity. So we're going to save this now. And then now if we run this sample again, we're going to be able to actually define this activity. So now we will do a configuration on the top right. We will select the app bundle. In my case, I only have one at the moment. We will select the engine that we're going to want the app bundle to run on it. And we will define the activity, which should basically define and upload that app bundle and define activity to the server. So the result panel on the left side shows the on the left side will show the respective ID of that activity. So in here, and then all the other buttons do not work yet. So that's something to keep in mind. So the only one that works right now is configure and define activity. Okay. So let's test that out. So I'm gonna do, oh, I think I have it running. So let's run that again. Okay. I think I already have one. So let me refresh this page. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna do configure, update the Revit parameter, and then we're gonna select, let's do Revit 2021. And we're gonna define the activity. So now it started defining the app bundle and the activity for that Autodesk Revit 2021 engine. It created the app bundle, which basically as a prefix uses our client ID in order for us to be able to identify it later. Then it adds the name of the of basically the bundle, adding up the bundle and also the environment that we're running. If you remember, I told you in a piece of the code where we have dev, staging, and production, depending what we're doing, we can define what this bundle is going to be, and then the version of that bundle. And then it will create the activity for that same update Revit param. But instead of bundle now, we'll have activity plus the environment. So if you see now, we have an update Revit param activity plus dev. And if we open this menu, we only have one because that's the one that we're just basically focused on. Okay. So at this point, we're good. Like any of the other buttons do not work yet. So that's something that we have to work on it later. Okay. So now we're going to head over to execute the work item. So a work item, it's basically a job that we're executing to specify the activity. So we are going to be specifying what's going to be those input files, and we're going to generate that appropriate output file with this. So the relationship between an activity and a work item can be thought of as a function definition or a function call. So the activity specifies the app bundle to use, which in turn specify the engine to use. So the work item is then called to execute those. Basically, the work item is kind of like the action that we're telling it what to do with the bundle, what to do with the activity, okay? So in this tutorial, the work item specifies the input file URL and the input JSON data with the new parameter values that we're gonna be entering on the web form, and the destination URL for that output file. So this sample will upload the input file to an OSS bucket before starting the work item, okay? So like I said, if you head over later to the view model sample that we did on the first day, you will see at some point a bucket actually recently created after we run the work item because we need to upload the file somewhere. Okay, so to execute the work item on Node.js, the following API should be added to the design automation JS before the last line of the model exports.router equal router. So to start the work item, this is where we actually will start that design automation endpoint, which also will upload the input file to the OSS bucket and define that output should be saved into that same bucket. That's the reason also we need the Forge APIs module, because in there we have the access to interacting with the data management API, which is the one responsible for the OSS handling. Okay? And OSS stands for Object Storage Service, basically our S3 bucket, and if you want to see it that way. So to help out you identify the files, both input and output uses the same original file name, but with a suffix of input or output, plus a timestamp. So we will build a router to start a new work item, basically pointing out again to that design automation module. We will start the work item. We will input the file, input the JSON, and then what's going to be our output file. So what's going to come back as a result. We have some catches in order to let you know if something failed to create that signed URL, because we need a signed URL for us to be able to download that file. And then also we're going to create something to prepare and submit that work item. And let's start with that. So copy to clipboard. We go back here. Again, make sure that you're on designautomation.js. Right before model exporter, pasting this snippet of code. And then we're going to continue, because right now we cannot do anything yet. And then on the callback, so when remember I told you that we're going to be using the nrock app. It's basically to get a notification back when the work item actually finishes. So we need to build that callback in order to let us know. So when the work item is done, the design automation will call back your app using this nrock forwarding URL. And this function will handle it and push a notification to the client using the socket.io. So we are going to build the router for the callback from design automation work item, the on progress or on complete. It's going to be an asynchronous callback. And then we'll always, so your webhook should return immediately. We could use Hemfire to schedule a job, but this will be more into the .NET side of it. So we're not going to use Hemfire. We're using nrock for that. And then should always return a 200 with the status OK, meaning that it actually came back. So let me see. Yeah, so let's copy this. And then again, below the recent edits that we did on the code, this is where we can put up the rest of it. Just basically building router after router in order to interact with the different processes that this sample actually needs. And then last but not least, we need to create something in order to clear out our account and just be able to remove any kind of bundles or activities that we have within our account. So if you remember, we have something here that says clear account. So we need to enable that action. So we're going to copy, okay, and go back to here. And right before model exports, because we need to have all those functions to be exported to the router. And I think that's it. Okay. So now it says like everything is ready. So now we can go ahead and run and debug. So running locally and debugging. Now that the app is ready, it's time to run. So this is where we can test and check for possible errors via the debugging style. And then using this sample, like I said, at the top, you configure the app bundle and activity. And then you need to only do this once, because you will see that your activity will show up if you rerun the sample, because it's connected to your API keys. So once you create and run this, it will always be able to be identified unless you actually remove it. We will specify a new width and height on that left panel. We will select one of the input files and then click on the start and on the work item. So the sample files can be found here. So if we open a new tab, oh, not this one, sorry, my Zoom bar is all over the place. So in here, we have an AutoCAD sample file, an Inventor sample file, a 3ds Max sample file, and a Revit sample file. So I'm going to ask you to select the one that you're going to be using, click on it, and then hit download. Okay? All right. So now, if the plugin code changes, then you need to upload a new bundle. And this is something that you need to remember. And also increase the version from B1 to B2 because you're doing a modification to that bundle. So if you want to keep the same name and it's just an enhancement to your current bundle, you need to upgrade that version. So this sample will create a new version every time a new app bundle is uploaded. So you already have the code in this sample in order to do that. So both input and output files are saved into the OSS bucket, and you can use, like I said, the View Models tutorial to view them. So now let's give it a shot and try it. Okay, so we are gonna do restart this. Cool. Go back here, refresh this. So like I said, you already have this here. So you actually don't need to run it again. If you run it again, probably will give you some kind of error that the activity is already created. But since we already have it available here, we're good to continue. So now we're going to choose that file. Oh, sorry. It's going to be downloads, Revit file. Okay. Then we can add some new values. Let's say 150 for the width, 200 for the height. And then we're going to hit the start work item. So now uploading the file to and then the work item, it started with this kind of identifier for the work item. I think in Visual Studio Code, a client is connected, disconnected, it's connected. We head back here. So this is what it's doing right now. It's okay. Grab the file, grab the values, send it over to the cloud, start running the app bundle. That app bundle, it's basically changing the values of the width and the height on that sample file that we just sent. Once it's done, it will notify us through nrock, and we need to make sure that we have nrock running. So mine, it is running. And once this thing is done, it will start displaying the information that the sample actually went through, that it worked, that it was successful, that it generated the new file. And now we just got to cross fingers for this thing to work, and it should be coming back soon. So it takes some time to you get into a queue of processes in that server. But usually, I think right now we might have to wait a bit because there is another tutorial actually happening at this moment. So there might be some people uploading stuff to that queue and all that. So let's just give it a second. And in the meantime, while we wait, do we have any questions? All right, I see one. Yeah, so the thing is, like, instead of, oh, perfect, Sandy. If you can run this on BIM 360 Docs projects, yeah, so not on the projects, but on the files that are hosted on the projects, yes, you can. So you will have to basically change the workflow of the input file not to come from here, but it can come in from BIM 360 Docs in that matter. Yeah, so it's just a matter of changing the entire, oh, perfect, the entire way to input the file on it. So probably with BIM 360, you will probably need to get a pre-signed URL in order to download that file and then just send it over to Design Automation. But yeah, it can be done. I can show you some samples that we have that actually do that. Okay, let me clean this up. All right, so perfect, successful. Basically, a time queue started at, what time stamp is this? We're gonna go with 19, 13, 15. No, it might be more like 13, 15, 13, 16, and then it took to go all the way to 39, so 1539. So that's the reason it probably took a couple of more seconds in order to do that. And then we get back the time uploaded ended, and what are the bytes download and bytes uploaded. So bytes uploaded 5472256 54477 download. The ID, it tells you stuff about the job information and which engine this thing was run. In this case was the Rabbit Core Console. Does report fail upload optional? True. The activity ID, which we know from before. The engine ID being the Autodesk Rabbit. The app ID, the update Rabbit parameter app bundle version 1. And then parameter JSON, output file. Now we have an output file.rbt. And then also on progress, on complete true, the URL to where actually got uploaded. So you can see it's an US East 1 Amazon Web Services location. So we start the work item, start download phase, start downloading the input, and do a get call to the buckets. So yeah, a bunch of info here that we can just kind of like display for you in order to get familiarized with what it's the entire process. But basically, whenever it's done, it gives you back a JSON response saying that what's the status. It can be fail, success, what's going to be the timestamp and the time queue of that. And then we'll also give you the download result file. Okay. So now we have that new Rabbit file. Okay. So we can try something. Let's see. If I stop this one, and then I go back to one that I was doing for you guys yesterday. Which one was it? I'm trying to remember which one I was using for the maybe dashboard. Was that it? No, this is another one. Was it this one? Let me see. This might work actually. Oh, but I don't have the, oh yeah, I have to change the, 1 second. Because or not, I'm not gonna be able to see the, so you see, now we have design automation bucket that we created, that the work item basically created for us. And then we also have the output Revit file, which is not translated yet, so we can translate that one. And let me also upload the one that we were testing. I'm going to translate this one as well. Okay. Yeah, simple file, like I said, nothing too crazy. That's still running. Come on. Yeah. So you see it did change something into that Revit sample file into the new one. I think what it was that it was probably changing like the window, and I messed up by giving it like such a large, yeah, such a large size, because I see something here that's probably that, and then I just passed on a big window. Okay, but the point of it is we see that basically there was a change in that file that we sent. Probably I was not too careful with the parameters that I passed on, but you're gonna get the idea of this. In a wall, the window that it's in feet. Yeah, so yeah, that's basically the reason why we ended up with a 150 by 200 feet window, which did make a difference. So yeah, that definitely will do it. So that's the reason we end up with this big like window in there. So, and then let me check another question. I'm sorry, is there other way around? I changed the windows. Now I got it. Okay, cool. A window in a wall. So deploying change the wall. How about the windows? Okay. Okay, but Sandy, I don't know. Do you still have a question, or are you just letting me know what you did? Because I don't understand if you have a question or not. Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know then. All right. So let me get back to here. I'm actually going to stop this one because this is not the one that we're focusing on today. It's this one. So yeah. Okay. So now we have that app bundle ready and running. So I will give you, let's say it's 3:30 East Coast, almost 3:23 for me. I will give you around 40 minutes to finish this, and then I will get back to you how to check how you guys are doing. And then when I check, you should have the activity and work item ready, and then test out that. Okay. And I see another question. Do you have to go through the translation process if you have the data on BIM 360? No, not necessarily. I did the translation because I was using buckets on that. But yeah, so as long as you basically, if you get the data from BIM 360, run design automation, and then send it back to BIM 360, you will get the new model actually loaded. And there are some samples that we have in our GitHub that you guys can investigate and play around with it. Let me see. Design. So automation. Yeah, this cabinet sample is a good one. Oh, I actually have one that I can. So 1 second. Is it this one? No, it's not this one, the one that I wanted to show you. 1 second. Yeah, for example, this one, or there is one that we have that basically gets the stuff from BIM 360, and that's the one that I'm trying to remember which one is it. Let me see, maybe this is it. Delete walls. No. Check models and create issues. This sounds like it's doing something on BIM 360. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see the YouTube recording for this. So yeah, basically, we start the monitoring of anything that changes basically on that BIM 360 side, so we can upload files into it. Once we upload the files into BIM 360, we will get a webhook letting us know that there is something happening in there. And once that we have that processing and then that to be moved into succeed, we will get the option to start that design check. So basically, we can do a check on that file directly with the Revit engine in order to make sure that if everything is correct with that model, or if there is a problem, to fix it and then just send it back to BIM 360 to give us that new file. So basically, something happened, so it creates an issue into BIM 360. So a column clash report basically did something. So it went to design automation, and it created an issue because there is a specific problem with this specific part of the columns in the model that it's causing that problem. And this is getting the file directly from BIM 360 in order to interact with the design automation part. And there's a lot of different things that we can kind of keep going over. Okay, let me see if I can find some other one. I have one that I tend to use quite a lot for, what is the name of it? DA for R, yes. Yeah, it's checking for issues on that one. Yeah, I can send you that link. I'll send it to the chat so everybody can have it. Okay, and then this one, it's something quite simple. We have a web application, small canvas. We have two options, walls and floors, and we can plot, let's say, a couple of lines, right? So these lines will represent walls. Then we select, we want to add some floor to those walls. Okay, so now we can generate that Revit model. So basically, what it's doing is walls and floors are a combination of points, right? So a wall or a line, x1, y1, 2, x2, y2. So those are at the end like JSON data, right? So we can structure everything in a JSON file format and send that to design automation, and then the bundle will be ready to build a new Revit file with the information of the walls and the floor that I just sent. Once it finishes, it brings it back to us to start publishing into an OSS bucket. Once it publishes into an OSS bucket, also request the translation, and now we will have ready a Revit file to visualize. So now we have a Revit file ready to visualize. Let me close this. So if you see, it's not like just random mesh. It is actually basic walls. So we have all the different information about the walls, the different information about the floor, and so on. This one's it's something that I did for doing like some kind of experience of a room configuration. So for example, if let's do a top view. If I select one part here, right, and I want to add a bed on it, it loads in one of the beds. We select here and we add a refrigerator. This kind of looks like a New York City apartment, quite small, everything on the same place. Then a stove. And then let's say I want to have my desk here. Okay, so now if I see it, now I have those items in there. And with the viewer, let me move this thing out of the way. I can do a transformation on repositioning again the items that I just brought in. And these are Revit families, but since we know that the viewer doesn't read Revit families natively, what I'm doing is that each individual Revit family, I'm turning it into a Revit project, but the viewer does have a capability of doing multi-model loading. So I have the first model being this Revit file, the second models being the bed, the third one, the refrigerator, the fourth one, the stove, the fifth one, the desk. And now I have multiple models actually being part of it. So if I check the model browser, you see that I have different kind of models loaded. And then I could start interacting with each one of them, just move around on the different ones. And then information for transformation can be created with external extensions that we have a way to create with the viewer. So yeah, that's kind of like one of the cool uses of the design automation. Basically, I started from a website with a canvas where I can just plot a couple lines, and then I will get on it. And then I can download that file, and then I have a Revit file now ready. If you see I'm running on a Mac, I not even have Windows running right now, so that's a way to do it as well. Can you flip and rotate a model and then create a project? The action is difficult in Revit. What do you mean flip and rotate? Let me enable your mic. All right, you can talk to me now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So one of the consistent challenges I hear about in Revit and experience in Revit is that we have models, populated models with different disciplines. It could be architecture, along with electrical. So you have equipment, and we have families that are hosted. Maybe they're hosted on a vertical wall. Maybe some are hosted on the floor, and they're extruded in different ways. So maybe you get asked to flip and rotate the current configuration, or maybe you have one building and it's supposed to be flipped the opposite direction to make a mirrored building. You do it inside of Revit, you get all types of warning messages.
Yeah.
Posting each other. The void that was in the wall is still where you left it. It didn't get mirrored, and all sorts of things are happening. Could you use, like what you're showing here, to do it in a more clean manner, where you do it through the web, and then somehow that information is translated for the existing model or project, where it becomes a cleaner operation?
Yeah, I think I don't see an issue with that. It will be a matter of creating, let's say, some kind of mirroring extension. So for example, if I have this, right, I have this room, and then if I have an extension that basically will do a mirror, it will check which models do I have loaded, right? And then it will be a matter of, I'm trying to think, how would I do it? Probably will be a matter of, let's say, mirror that same kind of room next to it, or just change the configuration of this model entirely to bring in this wall to this location. Like, for example, if we were doing something like this. Something like here, and we will basically do this and do this, and this one will need to go in this side. So basically, I just, you know what I mean? Like, I basically grabbed the entire thing that I had. We could automate that in order to do those kind of changes, but it might have some kind of manual process of saying, what do you want to mirror, right? Because if it's more about saying, yeah, let's mirror this in this way, it could be done. Because what you can do after having this thing ready is just generate a new Revit model, taking into consideration the locations of where those families are actually loaded into the model, and then just produce a new Revit model for you to continue working in Revit with that.
Right. Yeah, it might be more efficient for the design automation API to create new instances based on what happened in the browser.
Mm-hmm. But how will you tell those instructions to design automation that if you have this model, like how would it know what doesn't need to be mirrored and what doesn't need to be mirrored?
It would have to happen through the user interface to select.
Okay. If it's with that kind of input, yeah, I think I don't see a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I will give you around 30 minutes to continue working on the part of the work item, and a little bit less, like 25 minutes, and I will come back in a bit, and that way you guys can finish up this, and then we can check how did it go. So thank you for coming along again, and thanks for attending. I saw names that were here from the first 5 times actually, so that's pretty cool that you guys dedicated the time to us in order to help you out with this. I agree, this design automation one is a little bit more trickier than the other ones, but it does have some value and some like cool functionality later on. So I appreciate again the time for us to be together and then join and work on this project. I'm glad to see that some of you were able to get through it. And then also, if you have questions in the future, definitely for support channels we use Stack Overflow. And then if you want to email us directly as well, you can use this forge.help@autodesk.com. And if you need time at some point in order to, let's say, jump on a call with me, and then we can, or anyone from my team, we have a Calendly. So you can go into the calendly.com /Autodesk Forge, and you will get an access there for all my teammates and in the different kind of time zones. And depending on what kind of topic do you guys want to chat about, you can schedule this kind of like Forge Doctor appointment, and we can jump on a quick Zoom call, and then we can get through it. Can design automation work with fabrication Revit ITM? Now the question will be, can Revit API work with fabrication Revit ITM? I don't know the answer. You might, but if not, it's also something else that I can find out. I will say, like the best way that you can kind of like figure out if something will work with design automation or not is if you are able to do stuff with the Revit API on a specific kind of file or anything like that, it most likely will work with design automation. If it doesn't work with the Revit API, it will not work with design automation. So that's one way to kind of like identify if it will work or not. So yeah, Sandy, I will need to find out a little bit more about that fabrication Revit ITM. Okay. You're welcome. All right. So with that, I want to thank you guys for spending another day with me in this tutorial series. I hope you guys found it useful. Do you have any last questions that I might be able to help you out with? If it's about the Linux one, I don't. I cannot help you out with that one. All right, let me unmute your mic, Tade.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'll probably follow up with you or one of your team members on the design automation tutorial, so I can just wrap it up in case I'm hitting some barriers too. But this is pretty good. The whole week so far has been pretty strong, so I think it's
Awesome.
very helpful. I think these kind of hand-holding boot camps are very useful, so we can get past a few hiccups here and there on our part. One question I had beyond this, so We could try out those other samples they gave us in GitHub, or we'll be able to ask you and your team similar questions about configuring those samples if we want to use them for.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, like I said, let me get back to my previous slide. If I could click, that would be great. There we go. Oh my god. Now I cannot click. There we go. Let me play this again. So, like I said, you can email us directly at forge.help@autodesk.com. We prefer Stack Overflow, and the reason why it's because there might be some people already out there that have had this kind of question before, and we'll be happy to help you out because if you accept their solution, they get points in Stack Overflow. So it's kind of like a building of a community sense itself. So definitely, yeah, you can email us. You can schedule some time as well if you need help with that, and we can talk more about it.
And I understand there's the hackathon coming up next month. Would you say it's going to be different than this, right? Because it will be an actual project based.
Yeah. So hackathon, it's not gonna be hand holding. Hackathon, it will be more about we will give you challenges for you to basically, with a team or a one-man team, it's up to you, tackle on those challenges and then just decide which one do you want to solve and which one do you want to target and participate against it, and just hack some code, create a really nice looking demo, wow the judges, and then you get a chance to win a prize, and then also have a chance to display the work that you do to the Autodesk public that is going to be registered for the conference.
Okay. And will we be receiving updates on the next couple of weeks?
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. We have some. Yeah, so Sandy is asking if we don't have a team, is there a way to connect with others? Yeah, I'm trying to think how can we do this. It will be more about kind of like selling yourself by saying, oh, I have experience in this, and this area. I can help out with this, and this area. But I'm just trying to think, where could we have those kind of conversations? Or what I can do is that I do have some other people that are coming into the hackathon by themselves. So what I'm gonna do is that next week I'm gonna grab the attendees. So I will say, do this, register for sure. So register, even though if you're only one person, it's fine. Just register, because in that way I can get your emails, and I'm gonna select the people that are only one person, and then I will just do some sort of email thread for you guys to get to know each other, and then just a chance to tell the others what kind of skills do you have, and then if you're interested in this specific challenge, and then maybe we can pair you up with them, and we'll see. That's how it usually works in hackathons, but unfortunately we cannot get together, because other than that I will tell you, on the first night you guys get to scream out and shout out what kind of skills do you have, and then people will see like, oh, I need actually a Revit API developer, let me bring him on the team. Okay,
sounds good.
All right, so let me see, I have another question. So there is no minimum. The maximum is 4 persons. So the most that you can have in a team is 4 person. If you feel comfortable doing it as a one-man show, go for it. You can get a really cool prize for yourself. We want to see cool apps. That's what we want to see. Sure thing. Yeah, it's the. Let me send you that link, Scott. 1 second. Here you go. Are there any samples of model translations on GitHub where models can be mirrored and rotated? I don't think we have that kind of functionality, to be honest. No, I don't think we have built something like that. Translation of models? Yeah, trying to think what else can we do in order to reposition stuff in it. Not that I can think of the top of my head. If I remember something, definitely I can send you some pointers. Oh, and I'm glad that took out some of the mystery of design automation out. That's cool. Okay. All right. Any final questions? You're welcome. I'm glad you had a great time. Good to hear. Oh, glad to hear, Kareem. Yeah, hopefully you're gonna be able to figure out that that Linux stuff with the nrock. I don't know. I haven't tried nrock, to be honest with you, on Linux, so hopefully it will work. If not, well, just let us know. I can find out in my team who's actually using Linux and if they have a way to figure that out. Okay. Oh, there was someone asking me before why we were using the IE external application. No, sorry. Why we were using IE external DV application and not the IE external application. So I did get an answer, and it's basically, and I asked them, is it because of the Revit UI DLL? And that's the reason why. IE external application, it's what you get when you use the Revit UI.dll. The DV one, it's what you get with the Revit API DLL. So that's the reason we need to do a reference to that one, because we don't have any kind of user interface interaction with Revit itself in the design automation engine. And can you run nrock in another machine? Yeah, as long as you have it enabled. As you saw, Kareem sent me his nrock, and I was able to just access what he was running at that time because that URL was exposed. But that's the reason I'm saying, like, remember to turn it off, because other than that, if that URL gets exposed, like, people are gonna be able to start using your application, and we don't want that because design automation does cost credit, so you gotta be careful with that. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, cluster extension is actually pretty cool. Okay, all right, guys. So thank you again, and I hope, like I said, it was helpful. It was a fun week, a very busy week. So good job for you guys that stick over the entire week. That's actually pretty cool to see. And I look forward to hearing a little bit more about your development. And then, like I said, join the hackathon. It's gonna be fun. Maybe even a team can come out from this. If you guys want to share your emails or anything like that, just stay in touch, talk to each other, and yeah. And I think we'll be sending you some survey as well sometime next week. It will definitely help us out if you give us some feedback on how did it go, how do you think we can improve, and all that stuff. Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, have a good weekend. Stay safe. Enjoy. And I will talk to you guys next time. All right. Bye-bye.